The carbon tax is a federally imposed tax on carbon pollution in an effort to reduce GHG emissions. According to Environment and Climate Change Canada, putting a price on carbon pollution is the most effective way to reduce GHG emissions. Pricing pollution will drive innovative solutions to provide low-carbon choices for consumers and businesses. But would the real-life cost be worth the results? In 2019, the tax starts off at $20 per ton of carbon emitted, up to $50 per ton by 2022. As a result, gas prices are expected to rise 4.4 cents per liter in 2019, up to 11 cents per liter by 2022. According to Dr. Jennifer Winter of the University of Calgary, a $50 per ton carbon tax will cost each household, on average, $603 per year, as high as $1,120, depending on the household and province. These numbers will only get higher as there is no upper limit to how many dollars per ton is needed to get the desired results. A UN report that the Liberal government supported called for a carbon tax up to $5,500 per ton by 2030. Whatever arbitrary numbers the Liberals use in the future to tack onto carbon emissions is a futile exercise based on a questionable premise. The legitimacy of man-made climate change isn't even the underlying issue, but rather what role does Canada itself actually play in the overall emissions of CO2? Would the amount we potentially reduce justify taxing Canadians and further burdening our economic prosperity? For this, we need a little perspective. In 2017, Canada emitted 573 million tons of CO2, which was 1.58% of the total amount of emissions that year. In other words, Canada's contribution to overall CO2 emissions is relatively small, which begs the question, what difference will a carbon tax actually make in reducing the alleged effect we are having on the global climate? The Liberal Party seems to have no idea what exact reduction in CO2 emissions will come about by the carbon tax. With no corroborative data to show for, the Liberals no doubt see the carbon tax as a blank check at the expense of taxpayers and our economy, potentially increasing the price per ton indefinitely, perhaps ultimately as high as the UN report suggests. The People's Party of Canada unequivocally rejects the carbon tax or equivalent cap-and-trade system. As Maxime Bernier explains, the cap-and-trade system is a hugely complicated artificial market whose basic features are all determined by government intervention. When the quantity of something is arbitrarily determined by bureaucrats, or when you can lobby the government to get an exception or a better deal for your industry, we're very far from a market. In the same way, when the pricing mechanism is a tax, it should be more than obvious that we're not talking about a real pricing mechanism based on private property and free markets, but about a government measure. Almost everything about a carbon tax is determined by the government, from its arbitrary level, which can change in a way unrelated to supply and demand, to what it applies to and what to do with the revenue it generates.